Dopamine swipe, dopamine swipe. Followers, likes, double tap. Now they control your life.
What is going on, beautiful people? Welcome back to the 817 podcast. It's EJ and Jimmy in the house, and all we do is talk about Tarrant County, Fort Worth, and all the things that goes on in it, from politics, business, news, trends, you name it, we cover it and give our opinions, even if you don't like them. Jimmy, what's good, man?
Well, honestly, not much this week. After it was kind of a slow news week last time, we feel like things picked up, but a lot of it was not super positive. So the way we usually do things is we break down 3 short stories and then have one big story and then end with our wins and losses for the week. So this week we've got our 3 short stories, and our big story is more of a theme that we'll explain later. But we'll start with something really cool, and that was that this week Fort Worth welcomed the president of Estonia because Clevin, an Estonian company manufacturing autonomous delivery vehicles, has announced that it's opening its North American headquarters in Fort Worth. So this week, community leaders welcomed the Estonian president to the city as they announced the manufacturing facility's opening. The company manufactures self-driving delivery vehicles that focus on last mile delivery, which is essentially the last stage from warehouse to your home. So they would now have autonomous driving vehicles drop your packages off at your house. They're pretty cool. They're really cool looking. They drive up to 31 miles an hour. They run on electricity, and they are described in the article as looking like a cartoonish miniature freight truck, which honestly they do. But overall, like, this was a super cool thing that to the average person like us came out of nowhere.
Yeah, and you also have Ross Perot Jr. Coming out public supporting it, comparing Fort Worth to Estonia as like a thriving innovation or fast-growing area, and that we can learn a lot from this country of about, let's say, the country of about 1.3 million people, right on the west side of Russia, sharing the Baltic Sea with Finland. But yeah, I didn't know much about what all the technologies that were happening here. They're saying this is a $57 billion industry, with just same day delivery, shortage of staff when it comes to delivery people. So now if this can work, now the next step is really in the process of allowing these legally to drive around the cities that they're going to be servicing, and Alliance in Fort Worth gets to be a leader in trying to communicate that with them, and making that possible. Reading in the Fort Worth Report article about it, it's home of a couple big tech. I mean, heck, Estonia of 1.3 people, which is the size of Tarrant County, half the size of Tarrant County, has more innovative tech companies than we do. They had Skype come out of there. They had Wise, Bolt, all out of this small little country. So now that we're kind of being a bridge from them to the Western world, who knows what can come out of there and what other kind of startups or companies could maybe come this way.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, Alliance and Fort Worth really makes sense as a home for this, with Amazon's presence up there. UPS has a big presence up there. There's another last mile delivery company that is backed by UPS, Too Simple, that is up there as well. So I mean, overall, like, really, really exciting thing to happen, and to have a foreign dignitary like that come to Tarrant County, super cool. I'm sad that he had to come during like record high heat this week. He couldn't enjoy the nice, like, crisp early fall that we usually get, but still, and that, super cool.
Yeah, and the CEO of Sander Sebastian Ager estimates that it was a $57 billion industry in the next 6 years. So really high growth And really interesting. Something that's random here. When I saw that it was the founder of Skype, it made me think of the managing director of Techstars. If you ever meet Trey Boyles, his kind of spiel is about how he was almost a third person at Skype. So I'm even wondering if there was relationships pre all this. I mean, if you're almost a third person of Skype, now you're in Fort Worth being the managing director at Techstars, and Skype is Estonia's big win. I wonder what relationships are there. And hey, Jimmy, honestly, if you ran a country and you were going to start one, it sounded like it would be Estonia based off of where it is and like your overall energy. I
agree. I think it's super.
Look at these Nomi castles. Like, I'm looking at all the infrastructure and the water and Perot says 99% of their government services are all online and digital. So it sounds like it's high functioning and
high tech.
Yeah.
Unlike the state of Texas's government services.
Absolutely.
One note about this article is it says in just a few years, residents of Fort Worth's dense urbanized communities could start receiving groceries and takeout orders from a colorful little truck known as Cleavon One. And to have our dense urbanized communities start receiving their groceries and takeout orders from this colorful little truck, that would mean that we need to have more dense urbanized communities. And so I think that's kind of an interesting mindset, is that they're looking at Fort Worth and saying, you have a little bit of this now, but we think you're going to grow more into it so that you can be a good testing ground for something like this.
Yeah.
Because right now, I don't know if they're going to find too many dense urbanized communities that fit the bill for this.
Yeah.
But in 2 or 3 years, maybe we're there.
Yeah. And it plays with our hunger to build a brand around electrification, right? And so all in all, another cool economic win for the city of Fort Worth. All right, so let's go to our second story, and it's about Fort Worth leadership. City manager David Cook flies to Aspen with Ed and Sasha Bass. It raises concerns over potential conflict of interest. This was an early story in the week. What is your thoughts of David Cook going to Colorado with the Basses over Labor Day weekend in the private PJ?
The last time that our health inspector came to the theater, someone we had a good relationship with, I asked if I could give them something just as a thank you. They were like, oh yeah, you can, but I really wouldn't like it to be worth more than $20. I was like, okay, perfect. Gave him a couple movie tickets. That's the kind of government, or that is the kind of oversight, discernment I would expect from a government official when it comes to their relationships with private businesses and private entities. Not hopping on a private jet to Aspen with the biggest power player in the city and then acting like it's no big deal. I'll just, make sure that I'm operating with a little bit more discernment when we talk about Sundance Square.
Yeah.
Like, what? Get out of here, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I look at, I even think of, man, I would go on, let's just say lunches and dinners with different people in the city who have to be responsible of being neutral, and they wouldn't even allow you to foot the bill.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, I'll grab lunch. Oh no, I can't, I'll take it. So, so it's crazy to see how our day-to-day city officials are so responsible around this and try to be neutral, but yet, your leadership doesn't act the way everyone else is acting. So then what kind of, mold does that create in the culture? And he just is really nonchalant. He's like, yeah, I'm friends with these people. I know our friendship can be sticky, but like, I'm wondering now, what's the history of the friendship? Like, were you friends before you like all this? Like or did you become friends during all of this?
Yeah. I hate to break it to you, but like, once you're not city manager, I don't know if you're going to have this friendship anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it just seems like a very, A trip I definitely wouldn't want to go on, though. There's talk about going to Colorado with that crew. That wouldn't be that exciting.
According to the city's standards of conduct, city employees are not allowed to accept or solicit any benefit from any person, group, or business entity that might reasonably tend to influence the officer, employer, or advisory board member in the discharge of his or her official duties. And I think the tough thing about city employee is that it's not an elected position, but they are the highest paid city employee that we have. So they have a ton of power. We don't really get a say in who they are. And we are a city that has for a long time been controlled by a wealthy few. And so it just kind of naturally runs that the city manager is probably in cahoots with them. Yeah. And, this harkened back to the incident last year when Cook went with Sasha and some other people to Hotel Dries. They were being incredibly disrespectful. Sasha had her dog in there, even though they were politely asked to leave. They just kind of laughed at the bartender. And we covered it then, but it just kind of harkens to this sense of entitlement that group of people have as far as having ownership of Fort Worth. Like they think Fort Worth is theirs and we are all here to bow down and succumb to whatever they'd like. When in actuality, like a lot of the things that they touch are a mess.
Yeah.
Sundance Square has been for, 2 to 3 years now.
Yeah.
A dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And I just think it is a situation that we need to look at and say, when is it time for a new city manager? Is this guy compromised? Because it clearly seems so.
Yeah. And you got to look at too. It's like, I think when I look at what people in the city don't want to talk about is Sundance Square and the Basses. They're like, we're not talking about it because it seems like the moldiest of the gossip and politics between now. It looks like there's Camp David Cook and then Camp maybe other people in the city who are like, these people are not being good stewards of Fort Worth. And so it's just like now there's probably this, for how the Basses are running Sundance and the there's some people, I can't remember when it was with all the trees and all that stuff. When there was a big story about the trees, there were people clapping back at the Sundance management and how they were handling all of that. And so it seems like there's a soury culture divide in the city around Sundance and Sasha. Now, David Cook seems like the ringleader, and then I don't know who's keeping them accountable and like, hey, this isn't going as well as we think.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so city council has the power to remove or replace the city manager. And I think that's where the potential with redistricting as well as are moving towards a more progressive council, maybe like come next May when we have another city council election, are we going to have a dynamic where they might look at somebody like David Cook and be like, I think it's time for a change? I don't think with our current setup and people in power that's something that they would be interested in, given that, the Basses fund a PAC that funded a lot of Mattie Parker's campaign.
Yeah.
But I think it is something that we're looking at of will another city council or will a different mayor really consider if he is still the right person to be doing this job.
Yeah, the dispute was between the nonprofit Downtown Fort Worth Inc. and Sundance Square, and that really got Robert Stearns involved, the economic developer for the city. He wrote a letter July 29th to both parties asking them to agree on a formal written contract moving forward. Cook was among the parties CC'd in the letter. City managers have final say on disputes around the operation of public improvement district. So Cook said there will be discussion with City Hall about recusing himself in the dispute, landed on his desk, but did not come to a conclusion because Stearns instead recommended the parties handle it without city intervention. And he says he didn't frankly talk to Robert Stearns at all about how he was going to go about making that decision. After I read it, I did support it, and I think it's the right thing. I think both sides took it. We'll see if that works. I'm not sure, but they're going to try to make it work. So, right, you have like these two Downtown Inc., Sundance Square kind of, collide, and everyone else is kind of in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving on to our last short story, UNT Health Science Center got $7.2 million for Tarrant County's COVID vaccination work. It ended up giving just 9% of its planned shots. When the UNT Health Science Center took a lead role in our vaccine campaign, the center's president saw it as a swing for the fence moment that could pay up to $25 million and raise the center's public image. It was when the partnership between the county and the Health Science Center ended prematurely in July 2021. The formal paperwork said it was an amicable split. Leaders from both sides declared the partnership a success, and they continue to do so today. However, the Star-Telegram has gone through more than 4,000 pages of presentations, reports, and emails that detail a partnership that was riddled with communication issues and power struggles. Most notably, the center's efforts resulted in just over 23,000 vaccinations, less than 10% of the original vision of about 265,000 shots. When the partnership ended, the Health Science Center's efforts were responsible for only 3% of the vaccinations administered by the county and its partners. So they gave less than 10% of the shots that they planned to, but received about a third of the money that they were expecting to. It just all feels like a very fishy situation.
It says if the UNT Health Science Center had maxed out the contract costs and delivered more than 250,000 COVID vaccinations as envisioned, Tarrant County would have effectively paid $94 per shot. With the actual vaccinations, like you said, administered and a cost charged by the center, Tarrant County effectively paid more than $300 per COVID shot. So now you're looking at the cost to do this. I find this story interesting and weird. One, it came so late in the process of COVID. Like, how do you become a leader, a year out of the game? Like, we were already dealing with the situation. I feel like by the time they were having the process, like looking at it, March 21, when did you get your first shot? I mean,
January.
Yeah. Like, right. So we were already super kind of past all of this. So it's also just a weird timing. I think that is something that I would feel like, why did we think this was going to work at that scale? And then two, to be fair, I'd be interested to know what does these relationships looks like at other metros and cities, and what percentage of turnout and completion of goals compared to other health metros who did a similar campaign with their counties. Because I believe getting people to believe in vaccinations and COVID, we have just seen in Tarrant County, difficult regardless who's doing it. But still, it seems like you were given the resources, the partnerships, the messaging to be a leader in this, and you were only 3% of the shots.
Yeah, and it says the campaign failed in its aim to significantly reach some targeted populations, namely Black residents and homebound people. Roxanne Martinez, a Fort Worth school board member and community advocate, said throughout the pandemic, she helped organize assistance for her Diamond Hill neighborhood, which is predominantly Hispanic. She said the county and the HSC's efforts made little difference in the needs she saw in vulnerable neighborhoods. And that makes sense. The Health Science Center is not situated in neighborhoods that are predominantly Black or brown or homebound people for that matter. So how is that going to be the arm that successfully goes out into a lot of these neighborhoods that are majority minority when you're out of the way for them? You're a little bit hard to get to for someone coming from, historic Southside, Stop 6 or Como. It feels like there were just a lot of poor choices made in terms of this being a hub for what they say they wanted to be.
Yeah. One shout out to Star Telegram, and I just love how the whole story was set up. The interactive kind of graphs, the slides. I mean, this is just awesome. I mean, this one story is why you should have a subscription to a local journalism site, or donate to the Fort Worth Report. This right here would not be available. We would be unaware of these kind of information without the Star Telegram, without people doing this kind of work. So shout out to Emily Brindley and the Star Telegram. Well, I think what a good transition here is the leadership at UT and Health Science Center bragged and talked about how positive this campaign was. And it sounds like we have leaders out today, this weekend at the Tribune Fest, Tribe Fest, and there was a panel and a conversation where Mattie Parker, Nicole Collier, and Marc Veasey had a panel called WOWtown, Why Fort Worth is the Most Exciting City in Texas. And we're recording this on Thursday, so this was probably...
It's Saturday.
Yep. Wow, we recorded this today on Saturday. This is how long I've been on the road. And so Sunday paper might have something about WOWtown and this story, but they could not. But I think it's interesting how we're out there touting how exciting Fort Worth is. But when you're reading local news, it's actually like more wow because of the negative things that are also happening. So, Jimmy, can you kind of talk about how we're going to set this big story up for everybody?
Yeah, so we have a few different topics that we're going to call WOWtown, and not for the reason of, wow, look at what Fort Worth is doing, but more for the reason of, holy shit, this is going on here. So the first one that we want to start to talk about is that Tarrant County sends more kids to youth prisons than any other county in Texas.
Wow. I'm going to do that every time you do a hard stat.
So a lot of this has to do with the infamous Alex Kim, who we have notoriously covered as being unfit to hold this public office. But detention is meant to be a last resort for children accused of criminal behavior. Over the last 15 years, the state has tried to keep as few youths locked up as possible, instead focusing on treatment, family counseling, and other support services to help kids get and stay out of trouble. But in Tarrant County, incarceration is becoming the norm. More than half of the kids detained last year in Tarrant County were black, while less than 1/5 of the county is black. And although juvenile arrests have dropped sharply in recent years, children accused of crimes are being held longer in the increasingly overcrowded detention center. In 2019 and 2021, the county sentenced more children to the state youth prison system than any other. And that's just it's a sad thing that is going on here. And we continue to vote for and support the people in office that are doing this.
Yeah, and to be fair, there is some type of action happening. Tarrant County has a problem in its juvenile detention center, so the center is the Tarrant County is investing an additional $2 million and 21 staff members into juvenile services to solve the problem. However, experts say the investment likely won't address the root cause of the problem: an inefficient juvenile court, outdated policies, and dysfunctional state prison system. And I think ultimately that to me is what this story is a reflection, and all the stories we're going to talk about right here in this WOWtown section of Fort Worth, is that Fort Worth does have an exciting trajectory to get innovation correct and economic success right. But is it going to be on the backs of ignoring the dysfunctions of our criminal justice systems at the juvenile level, at the county level, and all that's being unaccounted for, and allowing people to just fail in all parts of our justice system? I mean, here's the other story. I'll move into the next one that that is, I think, really wow. This continues from the conversations we have about the Federal Medical Center Carswell and women being sexually taken advantage of by staff. And Kaylee Johnson continues to write, the journalist at the Star-Telegram, a former Federal Bureau of Prison staff member who pleaded guilty to raping 2 women at a prison in Fort Worth, was sentenced to 18 months on Thursday, half the amount of time one of his victims is serving for a drug possession. All right. So what are we saying here in society, right? That we are mismanaging this whole system, and yet people are only getting a slap on the wrist for 18 months for committing rape to 2 women while at work, while with a power dynamic, and admitting to that. And yet the lady in prison is having a twice as much long to be because of a drug possession. And then I also looked at, there was, in this newspaper again today, or not today, this week, a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old Arlington men are sentenced to stealing handguns in a parking lot. And you know what their take was? How long they're in prison? 18 years in federal prison. 18 years. You get 18 months for raping 2 women while at work, and 2 20 and 25-year-old kids, young people who are doing some misbehavioral stuff, selling armed guns, but they get 18 years, right? And so to me, what's really true, this goes all the way to David Cook, to Mr. Lewis Currell, who the privilege of white consequences and how you don't have any, right? Another great example, right? And this is something that I also think is, I don't know if you saw this Charter Spectrum story. This lady, Betty Thomas, rest in peace, was stabbed by a cable guy who worked at Charter Network, who was trying to steal from her after walking into her home and seeing how big her wealth was. And her family is going to get $1.147 billion for the death of their 83-year-old mother, 83 years old, who was stabbed. $1.7 billion spent amongst family. While Tatiana Jefferson's family can't get scraps.
Can't even get the trial.
Yeah, can't even get the trial. And what's the difference? Betty Thomas is a wealthy white lady, and she's going to get Pizzade. They got a great lawyer, right? While Tatiana Jefferson family can't even get the trial.
They're fighting the police.
Right? And every difference between how someone gets 18 months or 8 years or $1 billion and no trial, or getting on a jet and going to Colorado, and then other small amount people being responsible with the rules, the only difference is white privilege and white systemic assets of knowing how to game the system and allowing Fort Worth to be a good old boy club city. And that is what's the biggest wow of Fort Worth that we're not talking about, even though that we have all these great economic successes happening.
Moving into our next wow. Tarrant County this year decided to do an election practice to try and ease the nerves of the crazies that are trying to say that our elections are rigged. Now, in a vacuum, I think this is a positive exercise. Like, things like this should be transparent to people, but we're doing so bowing at the whim of a far, far right conspiracy that our elections are rigged from people that still won't say that the 2020 election was valid. And guess what? 12 people showed up. And not even the 12 people screaming about how our elections are rigged. But we've got a guy like Tim O'Hare who continues to peddle these conspiracy theories as the likely winner of the county judge seat, the most powerful person in Tarrant County. So what's going to come next if we're already bowing to what these people are asking for when they don't have the seat of authority? What's going to happen when they do? And I just thought it was absurd that if you're going to stamp your feet about something like this, like you're not even going to show up to be the ones that test it, you probably think the tests are rigged.
Yeah.
Probably think the tests are all faked so that we think it's safe.
Yeah.
How can we know if the test is going to be the same as the real thing when these machines get spread out over the county? Someone probably tampered with them.
And think of how many staff members, how much time they spent to set this big event up for nobody to show up.
Yeah.
And waste tax dollars, county dollars.
That's so infuriating. And like, we have anybody who volunteers to help run elections is a great servant to the city. Like, yes, you get paid a little bit for your time, but these people are getting up super early, staying super late to make sure everything is done exactly by the book, and you're wasting their time. You're wasting the county's resources for a stunt that you're not even going to show up at.
Yeah.
And that also leads into, the Tarrant County GOP has been doing a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth recently as, Judge Whitley stepped out saying that he's not, or that he's endorsing Mike Collier, that he wasn't going to endorse Tim O'Hare. And now we've found that the Tarrant County Republican Party chair has been part of fabricating allegations in a body cam video and images of social media posts to claim corruption and extreme racism from Democrats running for county office. He's repeatedly claiming that County Commissioner Precinct 2 candidate Alyssa Simmons sent crude and racist messages about a CPS case. Simmons, who is the president of the Arlington NAACP, says the messages are fake and created as part of a harassment campaign against her and others that escalated to involvement from local law enforcement and the national branch of the NAACP. Her opponent, Andy Nguyen, continues to say and send a press release, even though he told the Star Telegram he did not know the source of them. And then there's also body camera footage for which a man alleges that county judge candidate Deborah Peoples took part in ballot harvesting. Gateway Pundit, a website with more false than true claims, according to Pointer's PolitiFact, posted a story and accompanying body cam video. It said depicts a man experiencing homelessness who was arrested in 2016 on a charge of voter fraud. In the video, with a timestamp of January 3rd, 2020, the man is questioned by a Fort Worth police officer about election fraud. The man tells the officer that Peoples, who was the Democratic Party chair at the time, paid him to harvest ballots. Peoples is obviously running against Republican Tim O'Hare. I mean, come on.
So,
wow.
Wow. Can you set this straight for me here? So this is a video that is out there.
Yes.
And are we saying that they set this up for this?
Yeah, that the video is fabricated in some way.
Yeah. And they use this guy as a pawn to do this kind of stuff. Yeah, that is a big wow. And you know how, like, what can Deborah Peoples do about it to fight against this kind of stuff? Like, they're going this far, but this also shows how far they're trying to go.
They're scared.
Yeah. That they're trying to push these people to look super extremely radical and just do stuff that doesn't make any sense.
The Fort Worth Police Department did not immediately fulfill a records request for a copy of the body camera video. One, probably because it's fake, but two, if this was real, Manny Ramirez would have posted that thing on Twitter. He would have posted it on Truth Social.
He was probably the Spielberg behind it. And action. All right. Walk up to this homeless guy, give him his lines. Deborah Peoples did this to me, This continues to go, right? This is the you can't build a house with a bad foundation, right? Fort Worth. And so if we're going to be honest, these are the things that we got to keep accountable. I think it's easy for us to get excited about economic growth because we're excited about it, but these systemic things that are going on behind the scenes also have to be prioritized. As we keep going. You got another one, right? We got book bans.
That's right. We've got book bans, and Fort Worth libraries received bomb threats this week. So on Monday afternoon, Fort Worth libraries across the city had to close at least a couple hours early because of a credible bomb threat received in an email by one of the librarians. And fortunately, this didn't happen. There's nothing regards to a why in any of the emails, but we know that libraries and books have been under attack with the peddling of critical race theory and grooming and all of those buzzwords that don't actually mean anything. As well as the Star-Telegram and Texas Tribune this week published an article about how Texas tops the list as book bans rise sharply. That means that Texas is the best in the country at banning books. And Fort Worth and some people living here are taking this quote-unquote grooming attack on our kids as a reason to attack our public resources like libraries.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Big wows all across the board. And now you're seeing, right, you saw the superintendent of Colleyville, Grapevine Colleyville, is stepping down. I mean, and this is the pressure that all this crazy stuff does. When you allow radicals to win the GOP or win their area, down-centered normal conservatives of Texas that used to be just doing their jobs are now being pressed, right? So now it's just this is a fight for the Whitleys, for the that you guys got to figure out and solve for Fort Worth. There's nothing the other side can do. If we can be the Mecca of, we're the metropolis for the GOP of Texas, and Tarrant County's strongest, then we're going to create an empire and a great city on the top of a lot of bad things. So this 10 years can be amazing, but we gotta set a standard on all parts. Want to move the wins and losses?
Let's do it.
Okay.
We'll start with our losses and continue our trend, and then we'll end with wins. I'll start with mine, and that is that the Maternal Mortality and Morbidity Review Committee's report is going to be delayed. So every 2 years, that committee releases the Texas Maternal Mortality Report, which we know that Texas's maternal mortality rates are very bad, especially relative to the United States, and then even worse relative to the rest of the world. So basically what they're saying is that they haven't finished. The report was scheduled to be published on September 2nd. Now they're saying it will likely be published in summer of 2023. Said Dr. John Hellerstedt, the outgoing commissioner of the Department of State Health Services. In the past, they usually publish preliminary reports that aren't finished. They're saying now that they have about 30 cases left, and that because of reviewing those from 2019, they're not going to publish yet, which to me seems a very convenient time to not publish something on a hot button topic for the upcoming election. This is something that is a major concern of Texans, and especially Texas women who have had their rights be under attack. And this does not seem like a coincidence that 30 deaths from 2019 are, conveniently not finished, and this year we're just not going to publish a preliminary report either.
Yeah. That is, I wonder how much involved all of that is into the setup, and I wonder how we could leverage this as the progressive side of Texas to keep them accountable, or even still make it a campaign combo of all of it. But also, just like we know the data is, it's like not looking at the bank account when you know your money's down.
Yeah.
And just acting like you can still go out and be this person in power or do this stuff and fake it. You can't fake it. These are real people, real data that we're talking about. My loss, I'm gonna keep it simple. My loss is anyone who gave the new superintendent or a hard time about her new salary. A superintendent is running nearly $1 billion at Fort Worth ISD, and it is a lot of kids. It is a hard job, and we paid Scribner $330. You're talking after inflation. You're talking about after the cost. You talk about the lack of superintendents, the lack of everyone leaving DFW leadership as superintendents across the Metroplex. And, to me, it was a waste story on people complaining about things when you probably don't even send your school to a Fort Worth ISD. Mm-hmm. So I just think anyone who talked negative about Dr. Ramsey's salary, big L.
Isn't it $335?
Yeah.
Like it's only $5,000 more than Scribner's was?
Yeah.
In an environment where we're having to compete with everybody because nobody wants to be in charge of public schools.
And, a lot of people were also knocking her on the leaving Midland, but even the Midland board said how, this when their expectation is she's looking to be at Fort Worth for a very long time.
Yeah.
So we'll see, right? Going to be, now it's approved. I'm assuming now the next step is just getting in schools. But I just think an L for anyone just jumping on that and need to be celebrating that we have a superintendent who is here and excited to be in Fort Worth.
Yeah. I'll move to my win, and that is that the Amon Carter Museum is working to put on events that are tailored for neurodivergent adults. Neurodivergent is an umbrella term for people with brain differences like autism, Down syndrome, or dyslexia. It's free at the Amon Carter, noon to 5 on Sundays. So during the event, the crowds have the opportunity to explore the museum without the crowds that are often close by when new exhibits open up. The lights are dimmed, and there are several tools nearby to help anyone who might feel overstimulated, like noise-canceling headphones, weighted blankets, and fidget toys. I think this is incredible, giving kids and neurodivergent adults the opportunity to go and engage with art in an environment that is comfortable for them. I think this is something that should be like standard across the board for museums, and any sort of social institution is creating time and space for people like this to come and feel comfortable and welcome. So big win for the Amon Carter. And if you or someone who is neurodivergent, make sure you check out this article on Fort Worth Report to get more information and be able to participate.
Awesome. I love it. Another kind of Fort Worth win that I have here. I'm going to go with the one of Fort Worth's oldest buildings receive $89 million in improvements. The Will Rogers Memorial Center is the largest equestrian event facility in Texas, and it is not close. And we're also big fans of equestrian and the horse kind of industry. Anytime we talk about horses and the economic value of horses to Fort Worth, that's always something that you even hear the mayor talks about and how that's important. So it's built in 1936. Now that the city of Fort Worth is prioritizing renovations, it's approximately $89 million is projected to be poured into the property by 2028. The city allocated $13.8 million from its 2022 budget on the property, starting with basic maintenance like roof repairs and updating technology. Now it's preparing to spend an additional $27 million investment starting in 2023 to 2027. And the facility also received new dishwashers, fire alarms, an updated roof, and improved sound lighting system is on the books for 2022. It also received, Fort Worth proposed using $8 million of federal funds from the American Rescue Plan Act on improvements to the Will Rogers Coliseum Concourse. There's going to be a lot of renovations and updates from the American Rescue Plan Act in this conservative town of Fort Worth that was passed by our President Biden. So I think it's funny that we're like having this fresh new upgrade in our city, but everybody hates our president. But all right.
Ted, oh yeah, did you hear Ted on the news this week getting he got blasted for, big thing about, we secured funding for this new highway that's going to run from Lubbock all the way up to North Dakota. Everyone's like, dude, like you actively tried to get this killed. Like, not even like, oh, you just voted against it. Like you're actively out here saying that this was a waste.
Yeah. About 111 events roll through Will Rogers Memorial Center annually. So, which also includes the Fort Worth Stock Show, the Cowtown Marathon, or the Steak Cook-Off Association World Championship. So, upgrades, and I think that's a win because we need to continue to restore our historic buildings.
Mm-hmm.
We have done a good job staying concise and smooth as we are at another pod under 50 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at us.
Talked about a lot of stuff. I'm interested to see how this goes with our listeners, see what they think about Fort Worth. Is Fort Worth WOWtown? Why? We would love to hear your discussion, hear your convo, your thoughts, because it seems like Fort Worth is trying to sell itself as this great thing. But when you look at local news, when you look at the systems at play, there's a lot of things that are not that impressive in a good way. Right?
Yeah. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening. We appreciate your continued support. And I don't have anything else. We'll see you next week.
Peace.
Whoa,